Welcome to the Shyamcast. This is Brett.
This is Shyam.
Thanks so much for being with us. How are you doing today, Shyam?
Going on, I
I realized
guess.
I realized I never asked you that. So I usually just sort of like start, okay, now Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, how you doing?
Well, trying to keep myself busy.
Mm, yeah.
Hard question to answer.
But there's a busy week for all the
Yeah.
devotees at Krishna House this week, because we have the Rath Yatra festival this
Mm,
upcoming Sunday.
mm,
So yeah, big festival. It's the first time we're doing that festival here in Grand Rapids. And I was kind of wondering if we could start the show with just, hearing a little bit from you about this festival, Rath Yatra, and what it is. Um, very old festival from India, and they sort of do it all over the place now. And maybe some people have seen if you ever see a chariot with like these big very happy faces riding on them and people singing and dancing um around in the summer in July. So anyway, yeah, would you be able to just talk a little bit about Rath Yatra and Jagannath,
mm.
who rides on the
Mm.
Rath?
Very complex, very long topic.
Just what would if you had to like condense it to like
Few minutes.
yeah, like the 5-10 minute version, just like this is what it's about right here,
Mm. So we'll begin with the meaning of Jagannath. Jagat means universe. Nath means the Lord. So Jagannath means the Lord of the universe. Usually in Vedic tradition, the Lord never comes out of the temple. This is the only festival and the only deity who is allowed to leave the temple. And then he goes into the public. And then he sits on a chariot, which is like 2 floor high. Um, and the reason he comes is he gives blessings to the city. And he sees, like, he's the Lord. He's the Lord of the universe. So he comes to the universe to see how everything is.
Mm.
And
What
whoever
does
falls, go ahead,
or sorry, Prabhuji. Just wondering, what does he look like? What does Jagannath look like?
look like. So there are three main deities. We call them deities. Some people call statues. So statues is lifeless. Statues is something which are just carved from a material element. And they become deities when the life enters them or the Lord descends in those forms. So we refer to them as deities. So one is black, big eye, white eye with a black spot. Then big smile.
Yeah, big, very big pupils.
Mm. No legs, just a torso and a big face. Many times the face is bigger than the torso, that much big face. Then he is Krishna. He's painted black because Krishna is blackish in complexion. Then another is a white deity. He's white complexion, again big eye, big smile, similar looking. He's Balaram. Balaram is the elder brother of Krishna. Then one is Subhadra. Subhadra. Bala means strength. So he's given the name Balaram because from him we derive spiritual strength to overcome temptations. Then Subhadra means auspicious. And by her mercy, we become more absorbed in our spiritual life and our good fortune opens. She is technically sister of Krishna. So they three sit together on a chariot and they are being pulled by a lot of people. And when we are pulling the rath, one meaning of pulling the rath is we are requesting the Lord to enter our heart. And actually, when the Lord enters our heart, the heart becomes divine and surcharged with joy. But many times, our heart may be filled with many things in this world that becomes the cause of anxiety. But when the Lord enters, then it becomes a cause of joy. So Rath Yatra is bringing the Lord in our heart. There is also a lot of significance on seeing these three deities sitting on the chariot. Just by seeing one makes tremendous progress.
Mm. Yeah, you and I, well, we had the great fortune of being in India last year
Uh,
for the, like the Rath Yatra, and I mean, this is like a thousands of year old festival that takes place every summer in
mm,
a town called Puri,
mm,
east coast of India.
mm,
And yeah, I mean, it's what an incredible place and experience that is. It's like this town that just suddenly has a population of like a few million people. Um, all crowded on, this one main street. Um, just endless people, endless crowds. Everyone's sort of trying to make their way closer to get to the temple, closer to, where where these three deities are. Um, it is significant. I mean, an American audience isn't too, familiar with deities and temples, but the fact that deities would leave the temple, I think it really
mm,
is a very, I mean, like you said, it's like it's the only deities who
mm.
are sort of allowed to leave, and
And only once a year.
yeah, one time, and
Mm,
yeah, it was just so special. Each one had its own, enormous chariot
mm,
just being pulled by hundreds of people, thousands of people in the street, crowding
mm,
around, trying to get close to it, trying to pull the rope.
mm,
Um, just, this huge celebration,
mm,
extremely hot,
mm,
right in the middle of the summer. Um, just, so much energy at a
mm,
festival like that, just goes
mm,
on all day, all night, early
mm,
on into the morning, everybody wakes up very early, goes out and sees them up close, on the road because they stay on the road overnight. So just a really, really special thing. And then, at some point or another, when the, I guess when this tradition started getting spread, around the world, different cities started having their own Rath Yatras.
mm,
So, they have their own deities of, the black face Jagannath, the white face Balaram, and then yellow face Subhadra. And, just that whatever, in that town, that community will, set up the Rath Yatra. They'll build the chariot. They'll, and then they have their own version of this festival. So
mm,
many, many different, cities and communities do their own Rath Yatra now, which is very, very cool. Like I said,
mm,
it's our first year doing it in Grand Rapids. So, exciting,
mm,
exciting
mm.
time.
I mean, um, in Puri, the Rath has more than 25 wheels,
More than 25 wheels.
more than 25 wheels.
Wow.
And just one wheel is much bigger than our height. That is the
Like a
size of the wheel of Jagannath.
like
And
a
on the
big ring.
chariot, yeah, and on the chariot, there are more than 100 devotees who are standing. So we can imagine how humongous it is,
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
very high,
Like a several story building, right?
several
Yeah.
story building on the
Yeah.
road walking. And
Mm,
it takes like more than few hundred people to build it. And every year, few months with few hundred people, and they build it.
mm,
So it's the festival of the year, the
mm,
biggest festival of the year.
mm. So you mentioned that, sort of one of the real purposes of Rath Yatra, Rath, I guess we should say, means the chariot, right? So that's
Chariot,
what
yes.
the Rath is, the chariot. When you help to pull the chariot, you're asking, Krishna to, open your heart,
Mm,
to and yeah, I guess there's this meaning as well that I guess without going into because there's a lot of details to a lot of these stories.
mm,
I guess, one way that it's been explained to me anyway is that it's sort of like you're taking Krishna home. It's
Mm,
sort of what you're doing. He spends a lot of his adult life
mm,
in a place that's not his real home, and he's always sort of yearning to go back. And so, you know, when he's on this chariot, it's like the one opportunity that he has
mm,
for, to go back home. And so you're helping to, pull him back to where he
mm,
wants to go.
mm,
Um, and I guess, uh, in a similar way, we're sort of like we're trying to pull him towards us, I guess, right? Like
mm,
we're trying to get closer, have him pull us towards
mm,
him. And
mm,
so it's sort of this, it's like a reciprocal thing almost. Like, it's like you're trying to pull him to get him where he wants to go. And then he helps pull you towards where you want to go.
mm,
Um,
mm,
so yeah, anyway, that's the big meaning anyway that I always hear from people is that it's like, um, you're we're all trying to go back to our spiritual home or find our spiritual
mm,
identity, you know,
mm,
um, kind of stop wandering around as a
mm,
soul.
mm,
And um,
mm,
yeah, I guess Rath Yatra is a big opportunity to build on the relationship, that we're talking about throughout this podcast, that bhakti is centered around building your relationship with the divine. And, this is a way of really helping to do that.
Yeah, there are a lot of details to this, lots of details. But that's the short summary, few minutes.
Okay. Well, thank you. I know I stole at least half of your summary, so sorry about that.
Thank you.
Yeah, but yeah, it's exciting, and it's worth mentioning probably too. Jagannath is known. He's like the happiest deity, or he's
Mm,
like, he's like the most blissful.
mm,
Um,
mm,
it said our nature is Satchit Ananda,
mm,
eternal blissful knowledge. And Jagannath, like you said, he's got these big eyes, big smile. It's like
mm,
it's sort of like in one image, it's like what does love of God really like look like in a face? What does true sort of understanding of your real nature, the bliss that comes from understanding your real identity, what does it look like? And like that's
mm,
Jagannath's face. That's Baladev and Subhudra's face. Um,
mm,
so yeah, it's very nice, right? It's like, it's the celebration of that as well. And I was also hoping, as we sort of close out chapter 2 today of Bhagavad Gita, we can try to focus on that aspect of things, spiritual pleasure, basically.
mm,
This taste that we keep talking about. And it's hard well, I can't describe what it personally, like what this whole thing feels like. Um, but I guess, it's a good topic of conversation anyway, especially when you contrast it to uh sort of bodily pleasure or sense pleasure. And I guess that point is worth sort of bringing up again and again, that this spiritual taste is, it's just it's on a totally different level, than anything we can experience. We just with, touching, tasting, looking, hearing, smelling. Um, nothing in this world makes us look like Jagannath, you know. Um, And so, yeah, anyway, so I was sort of hoping to touch on today.
mm,
So the verse that I was thinking of focusing on is verse 70 in chapter 2. Um, I'll go ahead and read it.
mm,
So Krishna says, a person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. So, one more time, really quick. A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled, but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires.
Mm. Mhm.
What do you think?
So, I mean, various points. So, this is the only verse we discussed today, right, bro? Kind
Maybe,
of.
yeah. I mean, we
Maybe.
might get
Yeah.
to one or two others, but
Yeah.
yeah, there's a
Okay.
lot here.
Yeah. So, if we see the ocean has many tributaries, and so many are coming with so many huge waves. But the ocean is always stable. Like if we go, and there may be some waves at the surface, but at the bottom it is very stable, the ocean, and it is not disturbed by so many tributaries entering into it. It remains still, what Krishna is saying. So, so many desires, they enter our mind as we perceive the world through our senses, or maybe by contemplation. And if we don't take action based on the thoughts presented to us by mind and senses, and don't take action in trying in pursuit for material happiness, and if we let them come, tolerate them, not act on them, and let them go, and keep our focus on spiritual things, then we remain peaceful. But a person who is trying to fulfill every desire that enters the mind will always be full of anxiety. So these many tributaries entering the ocean, they are compared to desires. And ocean still is like the still mind, still consciousness.
Yeah.
What thoughts come to your mind?
Yeah, very nice image of how, those rivers never stop entering
Mm,
the ocean.
mm,
Those
mm,
desires and external stimuli, it's just a continuous thing. I
mm,
guess it's um you can't try to just totally stop it.
mm,
And I guess what one thing I think of is that, with this analogy that Krishna makes, um, you're not trying to stop the river.
mm,
It's not about stopping thoughts. It's not about, you know,
mm,
the the
mm,
directive to stop thinking is just not gonna happen. It's
mm,
more like the thoughts they keep coming, desires keep
mm,
coming,
mm,
but it's just you just remain still, right?
mm,
Like Krishna said, it's the person who doesn't act on them, who's not always striving to satisfy the desires.
mm, mm,
And then, that person is then able um to remain
mm,
still. And also it's like I have this image of like the size of the ocean is
mm,
significant to me in
mm,
this, like
mm,
I guess one of the, going over in my mind, what I've really been thinking about with regards to this verse is, our identity,
mm,
which we tend to have, which we usually have,
mm,
is, I'm just this thing. I'm so identified with my body or with my thinking. And I think we sort of fool ourselves sometimes into thinking that that gives us like a very big or powerful identity.
mm,
Um, when really it tends to actually limit us.
mm,
When
mm,
we're
mm,
trying to think of the best way to say this, like, a lot of times the words like expansiveness or spaciousness are used in spiritual contexts or to describe states of absorption, meditative states, like feeling very spacious, feeling, you know, um, it's like your whole identity is kind of like expanding out a little bit, you know. And I guess, if you really pay attention when you're able to kind of just let go of your grip on one of those attachments, sort of
mm,
just, just ease up a little bit on it. It's, you kind of realize that first of all, wow, I was like really sort of clenched inside and I
mm,
was kind of making myself smaller. You sort of get this understanding of like how, wow, I was like really kind of doing this.
mm,
And it was because I just couldn't like let go of that thing. What I couldn't, admit that I was feeling a particular way, or I couldn't, I couldn't come face to face with the fact that I have a problem with this thing or with this person. And you can just kind of admit that to yourself, let it, you just sort of have this feeling of where it just opens up a little bit, you know.
mm, mm,
And so this example that Krishna is giving of the ocean is sort of like someone who's has made a true practice of that over a long period of time and who has really grown. And so it's like you get to this point where, your identity is just so much like it's so much more closer to the reality, you know. It's so much
mm,
closer to, it's like you really are starting to see who you really are. And so it's just like expanding more and more. And so you don't, it's you're not that little singular little, thing anymore. It's like you're just totally open. Um, and so then it's, it's very easy. All those desires are like this little insignificant thing, at least the way that, a river enters the ocean. It doesn't seem like anything's happening, you know,
mm, mm,
though it's continuous.
mm,
So yeah, I think especially just when we talk about, I feel like to a general audience, it really needs to be pointed out. Like spiritual pleasure is different,
mm,
and it's like it's unlimited. It's not the same thing as a sense pleasure, you know.
mm,
It is not the
mm,
same thing as when you're just sort of trying to get everything for yourself as much as you can, as
mm,
much as this little body and this little mind can get, that's what I'm gonna get. It's
mm,
just it's a total opening up, you know,
mm,
um, to identifying with like being a part of everything, you
mm,
know, being that little piece of God, being a part of everything. So anyway, yeah, does that
mm,
make
mm.
sense?
So, few thoughts, Prabhu. As you mentioned, there are two kind of devotees, practitioners. One are like beginner, one are intermediate, and one are advanced.
Mm,
Beginners, they find it very difficult to let go, and that's why renunciation is a powerful tool. And where is this renunciation? Renunciation is not dependent upon one's dress. Renunciation means one thought comes, hey, let me get to eat this. As such a simple thing. And then I'm full. No more food is needed. But the taste is very nice. I want that to repeat. I want that to come again. And when I'm contemplating, oh, I want a little bit of more of that. And at that point of time, to denounce and let go is very hard. So, very simple example, but conveys the point. But when I am externally absorbed, then I will keep running behind the rivers, desire like rivers, which are entering into my mind. And then it's actually never satisfying. And later on lead to, oh, I overate and I'm feeling so uncomfortable. And then again, the tongue says, maybe a little bit more still can go. So this is like, so, and this is beginner stage. Intermediate stage is the desire comes, but they are strong enough to say no to the desires. Beginning stage, they cannot say no, they just act on those desires. Intermediate stop. Advanced stage, the desire stops coming. And what Krishna is talking here is a practitioner, not a perfected soul, but a practitioner. Then another example is if the river is entering into an ocean which is very shallow, then the ocean will be disturbed.
mm,
Or like one river, and they meet, and there is this. Like we have Grand River, our Grand Rapids. So there, when I sometime I go for a morning walk, and then the water comes and enters because it is very shallow, where the water is entering, splashes all over, and huge sound is made. But those sounds are not visible when the river are entering into the ocean. They just merges, and the ocean is like fine, like undisturbed. That's because the ocean is very deep, very deep. So unless we are very deep in our spiritual practices, it is very hard to not become disturbed by what is entering,
Mm.
because that's where our consciousness is. So obviously we are impacted every now and then. And then that's why there is beginning stage, intermediate stage, and advancement in progress is deepening our depth of spiritual joy, depth of spiritual practice, spiritual absorption, deepening that. And when we are at this level, then this will affect us less. When you further go down, it is more still. When you go very bottom, it's like there is no change to what is happening on the top. There is no change.
Mm. Yeah, like the top of the ocean is totally unaffected, or sorry, the bottom of the ocean
Yeah,
totally unaffected.
unaffected.
Yeah, anything that happens on the surface.
So it depends upon where we lie in our consciousness, at the bottom or at the top. Then we'll be like, psh. Then another example, His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj. Many of you may know about him. He gives his. There was a fish who was traversing in the ocean on the surface, and there was a eagle, and the eagle dived deep down, took the fish by his claw, and then took him out. And Maharaj says, like, the fish was, Maharaj saw, he witnessed it. And I saw, um, just there was a big bird crane. The crane has a long neck, and this crane is looking into the water. And whenever the crane sees some fish on the top, immediately, and then he just waits and doesn't do anything, and he just observing. Anybody comes on the top, immediately eats that fish. But the fish at the bottom, the crane cannot do anything. So Maharaj was mentioning, when we are at when we absorb ourselves more, which come by practice over time, then the external environment affect us lesser and lesser. It's very nice to talk about these topics, but it's very difficult to act on these topics.
Mm.
It all depends upon where we lie in the ocean.
Mm.
So Maharaj
Well,
said, if
yeah. No, go ahead, Proj.
Maharaj said, if the fish was swimming a little bit deeper, the fish would have been unaffected by the claws of the eagle. And this claws of eagle is this medial nature.
Mm. Wow, yeah. We have a phrase like surface level.
Mhm.
We describe things like, oh, it was just kind of surface level, or
Mhm.
it didn't go very deep or something like that. I think
Mhm.
that's, you can relate it to that. I mean, like we
Mhm.
like it's like the the natural inclination is to go deep into something, like
Mhm.
to really, and so yeah, that's very nice. Like, and the service is alluring too. I guess that's sort of one of the points too, is like when you're if you're you're just sort of striving to satisfy all the desires that pop up, like everything that just appears is suddenly like, it's that's interesting, that's interesting, let me go to that, let me go to that. And
Mhm.
see, that's why it takes some austerity to sort of to start going deeper,
Mhm.
sort of just like going inward, going more inward.
That's why I just said, there are two children of devotion, two kids of bhakti. They are called knowledge and renunciation. So as we progress, renunciation will grow, and we will be okay to let things go. In the beginning, we really want to hold everything tight. And then that creates so much anxiety to hold things tight, and things are slipping, or we are not able to hold them, we're not able to get them, and we really want to hold them, and then just the it's like huge, we are going up and down in the ocean in our consciousness. So let things go.
Mm,
So this is a renunciation. Renunciation means just letting go of things.
mm,
Sometimes people think renunciation is scary, but renunciation is great. But again, it's not a dress. Like we call in our Vedic terms ashram. There is renounced life like monk life. There is household life. So the renunciation is not these lifestyles. It's just wherever we are situated in, are we okay to let things go when the desire comes? Don't act on them. Can we renounce them? That is a powerful tool that comes with bhakti. Another is knowledge.
mm. Can you talk a little bit about knowledge?
Knowledge is not what we hear. Knowledge is not what we theoretically understand. Knowledge is what we realize. Real knowledge. Like I was talking to one devotee, and this devotee was mentioning, this devotee was involved in um, Rath Yatra, like our festival. So I was talking to this devotee, and this devotee mentioned, I have heard many times that take shelter of Krishna, Krishna is in control. But I was trying very hard to make things work and everything should go perfect, and so many arrangements needs to be made. And recently I realized, let me just depend upon the Lord. Let me let go of things and let me take shelter of the Lord. I am not in control. So this devotee was saying that I got this realization by doing this, that if I depend on the Lord, things will happen naturally by itself. But when I'm trying my best, so many I'm going into so much anxiety, like trying to control things. And the more we try to control, the more we are put into anxiety. Small, small things. Hold on. Well, realization is what we hear is one thing.
Mhm.
Okay, I understood. Okay, I get that. I get that also. I should let go of things. When I'm able to, when things comes to me and I'm able to let go of them, and because I have a deep realization, the disadvantage of taking it up on me and the advantage of letting go of this. When I realize that, then I am in knowledge.
Mm. So it's a lot more than just an intellectual understanding
Ah,
of something,
yes.
right? Which is like what I have, which is what I'm talking about.
See, Bhagavad Gita is, when it is realized, it is knowledge.
Mm.
It is real knowledge. And Krishna says when real knowledge awakens. So he does not say when the real knowledge is acquired. Krishna is saying when it is awakened. Awakening means
Uh,
it's inside out. It's not from outside in. And actually, awakening of real knowledge does not need outside in process. There are many people I have seen, first time I meet them, but because they're on a spiritual path and doing some kind of austerities or spiritual practice, it's just from within their heart, they speak things which is actually what is there in Bhagavad Gita. It's just their realization. Have you witnessed in yourself also? You would have
mm,
seen when you read Bhagavad Gita and some of the things you will be like, oh, this makes perfect sense.
mm,
So that is something that is awakened already.
mm. Yeah, beautiful Proji. It's already there, right?
Mm,
Yeah.
mm,
It's not it's not something that you have to go and get from outside.
mm, mm.
Right? Yeah, it's something that's inside that you have to like that you have to wake
Awakening.
up to.
God Keshodas Babaji Maharaj, like in our tradition, some of you may know, we chant the holy names in our tradition. So one of our great teachers, he was like Srila Prabhupada is our founder Acharya, and his great grand spiritual master was God Kishore Das Babaji. And he used to say, um, if we sincerely practice bhakti yoga, especially the process of chanting, he says, no need of reading books. He says, because everything you will know by yourself. So he's stressing the point that it is awakened.
Mm.
There is a song in Bengali, a traditional language in India. It says, Hede Gyan Divya Prakashito, which means the transcendental knowledge is illumined from within the heart. And then it makes sense. And sometimes we think like, oh, now I get that. What Krishna is trying to. Now it makes perfect sense. That's more of an awakening.
Mm. And so as this awakening process goes
Mm,
on
mm,
and one realizes more and more, right,
mm,
from inside, um, the the joy
mm,
increases, right? The
mm,
happiness increases and sort of continues to increase,
mm, mm,
right?
mm.
Um, Sort of like,
Our
you know, the ocean,
faith
like you're
also
just,
grows.
what's that?
Our faith also grows
Ah, our faith,
in the
yeah.
knowledge. Like, yeah, now I get it. Now
Mm,
it makes perfect sense. Till that time, we take it with some kind of skepticism. Yeah, and we try to understand it with our intellectual ability, our experience, and sometimes we accept and sometimes we reject. Oh, I think that part is correct. This part I don't want, and I just don't want to accept this. But slowly, as our bhakti grows, everything that we hear makes perfect sense. Gradually.
mm. And, you know, Krishna says as well, you know, this is like a person who can really be peaceful. You know, he's describing the conditions which, you know, like these are the only like this is the only way that someone can really attain peace, is what he
Mm,
says, you know.
mm, mm,
And so I suppose peace is another, you know, a feeling of peacefulness of just not feeling stressed, agitated, anxious. It's one of the symptoms, you
mm,
know.
mm, mm. Also, if we see from in the past, we discussed about the three modes: mode of passion, mode of goodness, mode of ignorance. If we see from those perspective, running behind is mode of passion and trying to satisfy all desires is mode of passion. And Krishna says, mode of passion results in misery. And those who can stand still, that is mode of goodness. And Krishna says, goodness results in knowledge.
Mhm.
Ignorance results in foolishness. So we can match what Krishna says in 14th chapter to what Krishna says here. He can be peaceful who remains still, not one who try to fulfill all those desires.
Mm, mm.
But the illusory energy of the Lord makes us feel by fulfilling those desires, I'll be happy. Oh, that it will take us probably decades to understand. Correct, right? All of us, I mean, we think if I fulfill the desires that are coming in my mind, I'll be happy. And by
Yeah.
letting go of those desires is the result will result in misery.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
Krishna says the opposite. Those who try to satisfy will be unpeaceful. Those who don't try to satisfy those desires will be peaceful. But seems like at the beginning, it seems like frustration because I'm not allowed to fulfill. I don't want to fulfill, but I'm really hankering for it. So it seems like frustration. But then Krishna says that results in peace.
Mm. Yeah, it's like because I mean, you have to go through it, right?
Haha,
Like
you
you
have to
can't,
tolerate.
yeah, you can't
that.
go around, you know, that obstacle. But no, you're totally right. I mean, when you're really sort of hankering after something, when your mind just like won't let something go, um, you're just convinced
Mm,
that like you have to do it. It's going to be great or it's going to be good, it's going to be good if I do this, whatever it is. And it's going to be miserable if I don't. And that's sort of like the conditioning that we all have. You know, it's kind of like this natural process that sort of happens to us. But um, yeah, it's like I mean, I guess this is what why these points of tolerance
mm,
of sort of just remaining steady are stressed so much is because there's another side to that. You can get through that.
mm,
Like sort of I guess almost like one attachment at a time. Um,
mm,
and you can get over that attachment. You can go through it and then and then it doesn't bug you anymore.
mm,
But it's like it sort of requires um that courage, bravery, and patience and willingness and to do it. Um, and I think it's like, each time you can go through one of those, like it's like what you're saying is that, it's like your faith increases a little bit,
mm,
your knowledge increases a little bit, you're a little bit more
mm,
clear, a
mm,
little bit more sure, a little bit more okay. Yeah,
mm,
this is really good. This is really helping, you know.
mm, mm,
Um, and so and then yeah, I mean it's like, generally speaking, our happiness, our peacefulness increases,
mm,
over time as we do that, right?
mm. One thing that you mentioned, we can further expand a little bit.
Hmm.
When a desire enters, then we feel like if fulfill it, then I'll be happy. And I'm unhappy if I let go of this. This is actually knowledge, but this is knowledge in mode of passion.
Ah,
This,
okay.
this person has an understanding. This understanding says this is going to give me pleasure, this is going to give me misery.
Hmm.
So that knowledge is there, but that knowledge is not pure. And that hankering itself is in mode of passion. One of things Krishna says, same type of mode of passion is hankering.
Hmm.
So hankering is mode of passion. Then the knowledge, the conviction I have is also in mode of passion.
Mm, yeah, very nice. Yeah. So it's like you're describing kind of like there's levels of truth, you might say,
Huh.
right? And so it's not to say that if you're sort of suffering because you really want something, you're not crazy to be like, yes, I will get pleasure if I do it, and it does hurt to not do it, right? So that like on one level, it's like, yes, that is true. Absolutely. Like
But that
in mode
is
of passion is what you're talking about, right? So like,
assumed truth, or that is an understanding, but that
mm,
understanding is not perfect.
mm,
That is called understanding in mode of passion. It's an understanding. The person is convinced. When the person is spoken a higher understanding, he cannot get that. You tell him if you don't fulfill this desire, you will be happy. You're like, no, Prabhuji, I don't believe that. Why? Because his understanding is contradictory to understanding in mode of goodness. And Krishna says understanding in three modes. So these people in passion, when they hear understanding in goodness, they may say, I don't believe it. Nothing wrong. It's just not perfect knowledge. But by spiritual practice, it is revealed. Intellectually, they already rejected it. But as they grow, then they say, actually, it makes sense. Now I get what it says.
mm,
Or when they fulfill the desire and they go through some misery, then again the realization comes, actually, I should not have done. Now I realize this is all suffering. Again, that understanding clicks because now they're analyzing in mode of goodness later on. So it changes. So people are living with all these contradictions, but spiritual truths are perfect.
mm. Yeah, so it's slow a lot of time, right? Slow process. You have to do things many times and sort of ride that roller coaster many times
Get
before
that.
you actually sort of decide that you would like to get off,
Mhm.
right? And then it's sort of another process to actually do that, but
And
that
it's
desire, the desire has to come first.
And it's also very important that it's actually the modes who are in control. So really, if the mode does not go from passion to goodness or ignorance to passion and then goodness, the understanding is not going to change. They go on, but we feel like this is what I believe in, this is my faith, and this is my experience. But their faith and their experience and their belief is all governed by the modes of. If you say, no, bro, this is not actually true, they become offended actually. They're like, how can you question me? All right, sorry. So it's the modes who are governing them.
Mm,
So really we have to raise the modes. And Krishna says by bhakti you can raise the modes and then go beyond the mode of goodness also.
mm. It's like what, we talked a little bit last time about how there's a seemingly contradictory thing where if you're super bound by your attachments, you feel like you're actually in control. It's like
Mm,
I'm just doing
mm,
these things because I want to do them, or we know whatever.
mm,
Maybe a lot of us have a kind of like a partial understanding of our attachments, but in any case, we feel free,
mm,
and the actual freedom lies in being able to withhold, and in
mm,
being able to get past those things.
mm,
Um, so I feel like that connects to
mm,
what you're
mm.
speaking about too, Prabhuji.
Krishna also says in fourth chapter Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says different kind of austerities. And Krishna says one of the austerity is to give up say material things, not. And Krishna says all kind of austerities leads to knowledge. Krishna is not saying if you see the culmination of austerities is knowledge, and Krishna says you can acquire that knowledge by humbly approaching a spiritual master and learning the truth because they realize the truth. And Krishna says austerity leads to knowledge. So Krishna does not say just by hearing or reading leads to knowledge. So they let go and then they raise the modes and then they realize. But then we can also hear from those who are self realized, and the perfect knowledge will descend from there.
Mm.
It's not mixed by the modes, pure knowledge.
Yeah, yeah. So getting it knowledge directly from someone who has it
Mm.
already.
Who has realized it will
Hmm.
be most effective. And that's why we have pure souls, like in our tradition, we have Srila Prabhupada. So, who is giving us the knowledge through his purports directly from a transcendental platform. But sometimes people say, I accept this part, but I don't accept this part. So that is because of the modes. There is apparent contradiction. But as they grow, then they will accept everything that is coming from a pure source.
Yeah.
Tough. But yes, it is what it is. So
Mm.
this is a knowledge, a child of bhakti or a byproduct of bhakti. This also shows that the goal is not knowledge. That's why it's considered as a byproduct of bhakti. Some people say the gyan is the highest, just knowledge is everything. No, bhakti is everything. Knowledge and renunciation. Some people are very renounced. They want to give up everything and want to live a renounced life, but they don't practice bhakti. Again, renunciation is not the goal, knowledge is not the goal. They're just the byproduct. The main pillar is bhakti yoga.
Mm. And bhakti means love,
Bhakti means love.
right? And yeah, love is the best emotion we know, right?
Yeah.
It's the most joyful. Um, I wanna yeah, I wanna return to the point of spiritual joy, spiritual pleasure.
Mm.
Not to try to get into this explanation of what it is because
Mm.
you know it's difficult. Well, it's difficult to talk to or to ask a devotee about it. I'd say I just as
Mm.
because well, I mean, there's with very good reason, but it's like it's very if you're trying to like hear from someone if like oh pro Prabhu, you've been doing this a while. What does it feel like when you chant, right?
Mm.
If you asked that question to somebody, the answer would be, you would get an answer of like, oh, it's terrible. Prabhu, I have no taste when I chant. I can't do it. I'm miserable. And it's not the truth, but it's what it's what a lot of people would say. It's what a lot of devotees would say. Um, and because it's like, well, if you really start talking about this, whatever that actual experience that that person is having, very easy for pride to creep up, very easy for, I guess maybe for arrogance to come up, especially if someone gives you a response like, "Oh, it's amazing. I have the best 2 hours. It's so blissful when I'm chanting," and then that person is gonna go, "Oh, wow, you're so amazing. You have such high realization. You're so great." It's very easy, for those things to creep in. And so, um, it's
Also,
generally taught, it's like, okay, whatever you're feeling, just, let that be a part of that relationship that you have. That's just the thing for you,
mm,
right? You and God.
just one line to add before you continue further because it's related to this topic.
Hmm.
Srila Prabhupada teacher, Saraswati Thakur, he said, you speak it, you lose it.
Mm, mm.
So who want to lose for some cheap adoration?
Mm.
You may get 2 minutes of adoration. Wow. And actually, correct, right? We lost
Yeah.
everything. And my spiritual master says, people appreciation is also a sort of envy.
Mm,
You're making people more envious. When you say, Prabhu, I am great, then other people become uncomfortable actually.
mm. Yeah, it doesn't help them.
And
Yeah.
then it feels like, somebody's material success actually give rise to envy in somebody else. People want to show, na? People buy the best car and they take to the neighbor's home and they show, I just bought this best car. And they feel like envious actually. They go and show thinking that the others will appreciate and they would think very high of me, but they actually become envious of them. But whether you go in a humble way, then people are very receptive and they want to love you. Everybody wants to love humble people. Everybody wants to stay from people who just like, like exorbitant. They're
Mm.
like very
Yeah.
difficult to make connection.
Yeah. Humble people, they don't talk about what they have. They just sort of try to help. And I think, it's like they're so attractive to other people because, you can sort of naturally, it's like implied. You almost, you sort of understand, okay, well, this person is really at some level, or they just seem to be very happy. They're
Mm,
never like talking about that. But
mm,
you can see through someone's actions, through someone's behavior.
mm,
Um,
mm,
it's you sort of
mm,
get that, right? And so
mm,
um that's sort of, it's like you see a lot of little pieces of proof when you're around a lot of spiritual people. It's
mm,
like no one's talking
mm,
directly about this, right?
mm,
But um and I guess maybe I want to talk about this just really in comparison with, like, these the sense pleasures, and
mm,
how, they don't build over time, you know, like a pleasure that you get through the body somehow.
mm,
It's kind
mm,
of just like a one and done thing, right? It's just sort of like boop, doop, right? It's
mm,
you get a little bit of pleasure doing something and then it's over. It's done. And then
mm.
you have to do it again, right? You have to just do it over again.
And if you do
And
it repeatedly,
yeah,
it reduces.
the pleasure you get from it reduces, right?
Mm,
And so, it's easy for me to talk about this, I guess, just being the neophyte and just being like, I actually don't have these experiences, so I'm not like pretending that, that I don't have them. So, um, which is just makes it easier, I guess, to try to introduce it, right, to an audience. The only thing I really want to say is that what it is taught is that a spiritual pleasure is a thing which builds upon itself and continues to increase,
mm,
and that you do not lose.
Mm,
Whereas a sense pleasure is something that just is very nice immediately and then just goes down. And then the actual amount of pleasure you derive decreases over time. And it sort of it does the opposite of building. It falls,
mm,
progressively over
mm,
time.
mm,
And you can think of a spiritual pleasure as the opposite of,
mm,
where it just sort of continues to build over time,
mm,
the more that you continue to do it. And so it's almost like you're like a body of water that's continuing to grow. You're getting
mm,
deeper,
mm,
you're getting more less affected by the surface things as you go along. So
mm,
that's my, I
mm,
guess my main
mm.
point. Yeah.
Perfect, Prabhu. Perfect. And I was thinking like on this topic, like Kalakanta Prabhu, he comes. So I asked him, Prabhu, how about offenses? Then he would say, Prabhu, my life is offense. So in a way, I mean, he's a spiritual master.
Mhm.
But then how they present themselves is they are not looking for adoration. Imagine a devotee comes like on that stature. Like we saw Ramapan Maharaj came, Kalakanda Prabhu came, and very senior devotees Malti Prabhu came, and they said, I am the best. Feel me, actually, we don't want to call them again then. Correct, right? And then, I'm a
Mhm.
pure devotee, and I'm too high, I'm always ecstatic all the time. It's very,
Mhm.
I mean, they will never say these things actually.
Mhm.
But we hear from them. Malti Prabhu, Prabhupada disciple, very exalted Vaishnavi. She says, I'm just a neophyte, Prabhu, just practicing.
Mhm. Can I say one correction of something I said, Proji? I used the word
Yes.
pretend. Just like, people are pretending that they don't have these experiences or whatever. It's really not what it is. It's not a, there's
Yeah.
no lie. There's no faking or
Uh,
anything. It's,
uh,
it's clear that when someone who's very actually advanced says, "Oh, I don't feel advanced. I don't feel like,"
mm,
you can
mm,
tell they're really telling the truth. And so,
mm,
there's a very deep lesson in that.
mm,
It's not, I just want to, make that
mm,
clear. It's not like
mm,
people are just
mm,
pretending, it's
mm,
they're they sort of have a deeper understanding of what is going to be best for each person, how they can really
mm,
help each person to grow, you
mm,
know. And so I mean it's like, it's a
mm,
true thing. They really feel that
mm,
way. And um
mm,
there, somehow it's like there's so much joy and everything in that.
mm.
That's a very, it's something that, it's like maybe we can't understand at this time, but it's clear by their actions that they feel that way, right?
Something on that is they have deeper understanding of what real spiritual life looks like, what
Mm,
the cowherd boys of Krishna feel, what the gopis feel, and how much love they have for Krishna. And then when they think of themselves, they think like, ah. So they have more understanding of spiritual life. And when they see from that perspective, they think like I'm nowhere and I'm experiencing nothing. And also a devotee, one of the quality of devotee, he sees little bit bad in himself. He just magnifies it and he thinks that that's what I am. And all the good that he sees in himself or herself, he just ignores it. And that one little black spot only looks and he thinks he's black. But a
mhm,
new person full of black, just ignore all the black things. You saw one white spot. Ah, see, I have this white spot. So it's just a perspective. And one is, again, passion and goodness. One is more realized and more knowledgeable, and they're acting on they're very genuine people, actually.
mm. Extremely. Yeah.
Ah, extremely
Yeah.
genuine. Gems. Prabhupada said, devotee means gentleman, trustworthy, pleasing to be around.
Hmm. Yeah, humility really is a very difficult concept in today's world. It
Mm,
truly is. It's amazing when you come across someone who really displays true humility. I think that a lot of times we don't really use that word correctly. I think a
mm,
lot of times when we describe something as humility, it's actually just sort of false humility, or it's
mm, mm,
kind of like an arrogance that's sort of trying to disguise itself as humility.
mm,
But yeah, wow, when you really meet someone like that, there's you just you totally trust that it's like, yes, this is like this person is completely honest, completely genuine. You just see it, right? It's sort of
mm,
like you're talking about the realization. We're trying to have the realization. You know, yeah, I don't know. There's something about when you come across somebody like that, you can sort of naturally just sort of like you just sort of see that that person has some kind of realization, right? It's a
And that
natural.
is also because Krishna is sitting in everyone's heart. And when there is something genuine, then Krishna gives us feeling in our heart. Great. That feelings actually come from Krishna within our heart because Krishna is so pleased with that personality. But then if somebody fakes, then Krishna is sitting in everyone's heart. Then Krishna does not give that respect for somebody who is faking actually. It won't come from inside. We may say from externally, from the words we are hearing, Prabhu, this is amazing. But we won't be convinced from within our heart. But when we meet a person who is genuine and pure, then externally we may be hearing, I'm offense personified and Prabhu, I have no taste. But inside the heart, we'll feel like, wow. And that is the real what comes from within the heart. So nobody can cheat Krishna. Krishna is in our heart.
Mm. Yeah, wonderful. It's like we're all our hearts are just always speaking to each other. You know, that's how we really know.
Ah,
Right?
we know, we know. So I think it's 5:30. I think it's time.
Yeah,
So
very good, Prabhuji.
thank you everyone for joining, and we hope it was helpful. Thank you very much. See you next week. Bye for now.